The Garden Report is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report. The Celtics collapse in devastating fashion. 119-117 the final. Celtics led by 10 with 5 minutes to go in this game. Looked on their way to the second round against Philadelphia. We had a trip planned out.
We really did, Bobby. Damn it, Celtics ruined it.
So we'll go back to Atlanta instead. Jayson Tatum, I think, ruined it. Is that strong?
He's part of it. I don't think it all comes down to him, but he's certainly a big part of it. For sure.
8 for 21. Falls to 39% from the field over his last 3 games. Shot making difficult. Turnovers key late. The big one, throwing the ball away in a double team, the DeAndre Hunter, as part of a sequence where Trae Young hit back-to-back threes. Hit 3 free throws in a row. One of them coming from Jayson Tatum's technical foul that put the Hawks ahead after initially tying the game. Rob had a key putback that staved off the Hawks for a bit. Derek White hit 2 potentially game-winning free throws on his only look late in the game. And then Young hit a long 3 over Brown for the win. Tatum unable to get a pass off to, I think he was thrown to Horford in the post, and then launched a heave with 0.5 left that wasn't close.
New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win.
That's the anatomy of a meltdown. Defensive lapses too, Josue, but much of it stemmed from the offense. Turnovers, bad shots, and just a slow pace, Joe Mazzulla said late.
Yeah, just poor execution. You know, I feel like the Celtics their approach in those final few minutes were almost as if the same team that had that big lead. You know, they were just trying to run the Hawks right off the floor with one final run. But you have to sort of be way more meticulous, right, in your attack. And I feel like the Celtics just didn't have that kind of strategy. They wanted to go with the flow. They wanted to just, again, run the Hawks off the floor, but then a couple of stops from the Hawks, 2 back-to-back threes. Well, the one what was it? The layup before Trae hit those back-to-back threes. I mean, that 8-point swing changed everything. It was a tied game, and all of a sudden they turned into the stagnant Celtics. I thought Jaylen Brown did a good job of finding Tatum, or excuse me, the other way around, right? Tatum finding Brown for that shot. Right. And then after that, once the game was tied, I just feel like Jaylen was just unsure of what he was going to do. He was doing that thing where he's trying to make a decision midair, and a couple of times it was to Robert Williams, and it didn't work out. You know, the first time it was a turnover, and the second time Rob couldn't get the layup to go.
Yep.
And that was exactly what the Hawks need, and especially someone like Trae Young who's going to make you pay, and you give him that space to hit that dagger or that game-winning 3, leaving a point and some change or 1 second and some change left for the Celtics to rebuttal. And it was just a recipe for disaster for the Celtics.
They need to shake up the looks they get for Tatum. They need to shake up the offense, I think, in terms of how it's structured late in games, particularly.
I thought they missed Brogdon, honestly. But, I mean, you could go with the what-ifs, but that's just one thing.
They go double big late, and I think that made them stagnant. They didn't go to that in Game 3, and they go back to it in Game 4, and they grind out this great defensive win in that game. Tonight, though, they needed offense late to separate themselves, and they didn't function like we've seen this team for much of the year play. They did generate some stops down the stretch. They didn't turn those into breakouts, especially for Brown, the third best transition player in the game. Only got 1 look driving downhill in the half court. Onyeka Okongwu was lined up to block him, and Rob almost put that ball back in. But those are just sort of the tight moments in the half court where the defense is so set that they're reacting to, I think, slow movements, slow sets, or any kind of hesitancy when it comes to decision making. I still look at that Tatum turnover. 2 guys come on him. He sort of steps back. He pump fakes once, twice, and those guys' hands are just up and in his face to tip the ball into the backcourt. And White's standing there wide open in the paint. They keep saying, even back to last year, 0.5-second decisions. They're getting caught late in the shot clock. They're getting caught moving slowly, and especially as John emphasized on the show, they're bringing the ball up way too slowly. So I think that's the big adjustment is the ball can't be in Tatum's hands coming up the court. He just operates too slowly in that spot.
Well, you got to play with a sense of urgency in that spot, right? I just didn't see any of that from the Celtics. It was very lax. It was very, right up until the point where the Hawks tied it up, and then they were too urgent. They were too trying to get into their or try to make things like it was going to be an easy shot. And I felt like, Tatum was a part of that, bringing the ball up. Like, you have to put the Atlanta Hawks on their heels, regardless if they're on their run. You have to continue to match that energy, or at least try to compete. And I felt like they were just thinking that they could make one big play to put themselves ahead, and that was going to be it. But like, no, the Atlanta Hawks are playing for their season. I mean, they had that desperation. I felt like the Celtics just didn't have that desperation. Tatum talked about playing with that same desperation because of the opportunities that they missed throughout the course of that deep playoff run last year. They did the complete opposite in this. You didn't see that type of approach, especially in the second half when it mattered the most.
A lot of talk of learning from last year. Here's John Corrales' question to Tatum.
Yeah, this is
particularly on this, a good one, and an interesting answer from Tatum here.
Why couldn't you guys come out, like you said, and approach it like you were, as you said, down 3-1 instead of up 3-1?
Yeah, gotta give them credit. They played well. They made big time shots at the right time, and obviously it's we wanted to win. We were focused, but some turnovers and 50-50 balls that kind of hurt us. I'm sure we'll watch film and talk about it.
So we've heard this question again and again all year, and I almost stopped liking it at a certain point because I think it just became so tired. Obviously, they learned stuff from last year. Obviously, last year stuck with them. This moment, though, makes you, or reminds you rather, why this question was so pertinent throughout the year. Did they really take anything from that run last year? You see the video highlights, you see all the great wins, the great record, number 2 offense, number 2 defense. We still had some concerns, though, because of things like these.
Yeah.
When they're ahead, when they're in a good position, when they're in a spot where they can clinch a series or close a game out, they relax a little bit and things just get a little loose. And that, to me, I keep hammering Tatum's role in all of this. And I know Brown made mistakes. I know Smart made mistakes. He's the guy that everybody sort of plays off in that spot. And I don't think anyone else feels empowered in that moment to get the ball and make a play. Like, they're looking to him to do something.
Yeah, well, I feel like Tatum, I mean, he's the one that brought it up, right? I mean, it's easy to point at that because that's what he was talking about after Game 4. And we believed him. I believed him. I thought the Celtics would go out here and blow these guys out, especially without DeJounte Murray. Now you look at the quotes that he said about the officials and all that. He has all the energy in the world to come into Game 6 and give you the best performance of the series. And will they survive that? Will Trae Young duplicate what he did here in Boston? Maybe. I mean, if we're talking about Game 7, it gets that much more interesting. But, back to Tatum, though, I mean, he's the one that brought it up. And clearly that this team is not over that. They're still that team that's going to give their opponent an opportunity to make things interesting. It's who they've been all year long. It's the lesson that they should have learned since last season, and it hasn't carried over. And to be honest with you, I really think that's who they are. Maybe the rest of the way, if they do get back to the NBA Finals, this is what it looks like. Maybe it's a 6-game series, 7-game series, or they get back-to-back. How much energy they'll have at the end of that, we'll have to wait and see. Do they have reinforcements when you compare this team to last year's team? Of course they do. But how will they perform at that level? Or will they perform at that level, I should say, throughout the course of a best-of-7 series? Because we haven't seen that. I mean, have you? Last season, this year, obviously, games like this make they draw out these series where you can easily close things out, get into the next series, not have to travel, and they laid an egg here. I mean,
last time was
they missed
Nets.
a golden opportunity. The last time was the Nets where they had that. But then Jayson Tatum brought up a good point 2 nights ago in Atlanta when he was like, man, 3 out of those 4 games were really interesting. There was the game winner in Game 1. They won by 3 in Game 2. I mean, the margin of victory wasn't that large, and that wasn't a typical first-round matchup in the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, fair. But what happened the rest of the way, and how have those lessons not carried over into this playoff run?
That game shows what they're capable of. Brown breaking out in the final play, throwing it to Smart.
but it's like a motivated thing, right? I mean, there were so many storylines in that one.
And the Nets were collapsing in their own
right. And they knew that. They felt the sense of that. They knew that, look, we can take over the division. That's why at the time Ime Udoka wasn't afraid of them. I mean, it played into the storylines, whatever the case may be. Maybe there was extra motivation there, but we haven't seen that since.
And we don't hear them identify the root cause of these issues in these spots. Brown saying, we're not pointing fingers. I can remember Al throughout the year saying, I don't know, I can't answer why we slow down late. I don't know. And Tatum, when I asked him tonight, similar answer.
Same thing, yeah. He said, I can't even tell you, right? Yeah. Because because it's like, this is who we are,
It just sneaks up on them, it just happens.
And they can't pinpoint how to avoid it because when they least expect it, it happens over and over.
And Tatum, as we played on the postgame show tonight, saying that turnovers happen, 50-50 balls. It's almost like there's no role that they play in those things. It's just stuff that happens, snuck up on them, and it really did. when it got tied late here and the crowd stood up to their feet, everyone looked stunned that this game went where it did. And of course, it's just a catastrophic collapse that sends the Celtics back to Atlanta to play the Hawks in a Game 6. We'll have coverage from Atlanta as well as on Celtics postgame Thursday when Game 6 tips off. Practice tomorrow. Check out Celtics All Access for that, as well as our concern level now with this series, but also this team's ability to win a championship when you see something like this. We'll talk about that in our next video. Josue, Pavon, Bobby Manning. This has been the Garden Report. 119-117 the final here in favor of the Hawks.
The Garden Report is brought to you by FanDuel. Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet.
The Garden Report is brought to you by BetterHelp. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/Garden today to get 10% off your first month. This edition of the Garden Report is also brought to you by Athletic Greens. Visit athleticgreens.com/garden for a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase.